when we look at this whole, what everybody's referring as a digital transformation, industry 4.0, is here to stay. When we look at top 10 companies globally by market cap, 7 of them are digital companies, right? And we look at the way this whole operations and supply chain, in terms of either we talk about demand volatility or in terms of the role of digital. For example, when Amazon talks about delivery within 2 hours, suddenly it changes standard for everything, right? And earlier, what happened is, if I was a company like Unilever or a company like Asian Paints or Marico, I mean, a lot of time I would say, yes, this is for real, but I can afford to probably sit back and watch from a sideline and see how it's evolving. I think what pandemic has forced us to say, look, you better, get involved, don't watch from a sideline, right? And that's where, this is a very interesting in terms of what are this technology doing. So for example, refer to IoT, right? Now, when we look at IoT, for example, Amazon Go talks about having, sensors on the shelves, so that finally I drive my whole, my supply chain, which becomes a demand driven. You have a Zara which puts RFID tag. So those IoT examples, already you have companies which have examples where they have put in place. We talk about whole analytics, right? So when we talk about this whole demand-driven supply chain, right? This analytics in terms of the way you do forecasting, the way you do planning, right? Each of this is changing phenomenally. Suddenly, when you look at this whole planning horizon, right? Typically, we used to work with the planning horizons, cycles which are a week or 2 weeks. Now, suddenly, when the Amazon talks about delivery within 2 hours, obviously your planning cycle has to be very different from what was it earlier. You look at, this whole industrial IoT, which some of you talked about. So Siemens is this factory in Hamburg in Germany, where they're talking about, Six Sigma level of quality, talking about, that every part can be unique, right? Because the parts and machine are able to talk to each other. Suddenly, the way you look at your planning, scheduling, and ability to bring that flexibility at a scale is very different, because there you're talking about every PLC today in that factory is produced 1 per second, right? So suddenly you're talking about a scale. So we're dealing with a toy problem. We're done at scale, which are very different. What we are saying is each one of them allows us to look at issues in a very different way from what we've done in past. So for example, earlier, we would say we want to understand this phenomenon and we want to make a change of what's happening on a shop floor. Now, this digital twin allows me to actually not just an abstract small model, but replicate that whole factory, digitally. I do a lot of experimentation, make changes, and see, what would work, and then finally implement this. Same way when it comes to, augmented reality. So I'm saying each of this, we already have, cases where they've implemented at a scale and made a difference. Now, when we look at this as a manager, I think the key is first, finally, what are we trying to do? We are essentially, when we talk about operation supply chain, we're talking about looking at a material flow, information flow, and financial flow. And through this, we are adding value to our end customers. So what we are saying is, whenever we look at this technology, it's not just what this technology can do individually, but can you pose this problem in a way that how do I reimagine this whole supply chain, which is this material flow, information flow, and financial flow, to deliver a value, and even value I can reimagine.
When we talk about, reimagining, one of the things that we need to understand is that, we are looking at new ways of doing things. Moving away from how we have always assumed things must be done. Let's look at some examples, because that will make it easier for us to wrap our head around this. All of us are familiar with, buying and selling shares. Share brokerage is a business that's quite well known. So typically what you would do, I'm not talking about the pre-demat account era, even in the post-demat account era. Let us say you want to open a share trading account, you would call up somebody, and then somebody will come and they will give you reams of forms to be filled up, and you need to sign on the margin and things like that, and then you need to provide documentation like photocopy of your PAN card, this, that, and all, and then they will take the whole application and they will go. And then maybe in a couple of weeks, you will get a kit. You open the kit and you will find a lot of stuff. There will be password will come in a separate courier and all that. And by the time your decision to actually sign up for a trading account and you being able to execute your first trade, it's already a month. Okay. And even today, the mainstream stock brokerages follow exactly this model. They don't do anything different. Now, what has happened in the last few years? First of all, Aadhaar happened. We all know Aadhaar happened. Then on the side of it, the government decided, the ministry decided that, we are going to allow, digital authentication. And digital authentication, not just in terms of digital signatures, which is actually expensive. You can actually, there are these certifying authorities like NSDL, and there are a few others. There are the eight certifying authorities who have been approved by the government. So they have access to Aadhaar database, and they can actually validate the identity of people. And the validation happens through a simple Aadhaar OTP. So suddenly what happens is that it's possible for private businesses to provide KYC as a service. And a good example is, there are several actually in the market. A good example is this startup by name Digio, which came up with the idea of eKYC, where they said, look, I can get digitally signed documents for you. And who are they talking to? Their customers are banks. Their customers are, anyone who needs to do a KYC. So one of the first, companies that actually jumped onto this possibility of a new technology. Remember, the technology they did not invent. The technology was available, and they just made use of that opportunity. They mixed it and matched it with what they already have. And that company was Zerodha. Now, what has Zerodha done? Zerodha has reimagined how they will comply with the statutory requirement of KYC for registering a customer. It's a very simple thing. Technology available. They just needed to sort of mix it and match it, and then somehow dovetail it into their operations in this particular case. Correct. And so this is a service. So we can say, oh, so what is so great about that? Anyway, the service is digital, demat account and all that. Let's look at another example where we are talking about physical, something that that's not information. Disney theme parks and resorts, they have something called a magic band. Magic band is basically a plastic wearable that you wear on your wrist, and this has an RFID chip, and this each magic band is linked to an account. So even before actually leaving your home, you can book the rooms in the resort, you can book the rides that you want to take, you can book the food that you want to have in the food court, everything. And what you do, as soon as you go there, you just tap it on another Mickey Mouse face, and then you go in. And let us say you go near a ride, Disney knows that you are near the ride and you might want to ride it. So as soon as you go near, you will be allowed in. So no long queues. One is how you mix and match technology. I think that is the most critical aspect of reimagining. Zerodha early on picking up Digio and then plugging into their product and their business model, and then that's one level. So you have the technology mix and match, and then you have the business model, which is what is the value proposition, how do I make money and all that. The next level is what Magic Band is showing us, which is actually operations and supply chain. How do we use the newly configured technology mix and match and the business model to actually improve both efficiency and effectiveness of my operations and supply chain? But there is one more level at which, we need to reimagine, and that's about, ecosystems and partners. A good example is, Volkswagen has been working on an industrial cloud with Amazon Web Services and Siemens over the past couple of years. They have connected all their factories, and now they are in the phase of connecting their vendors into that industrial platform. And very soon they have plans to open up this platform for others, including, their rivals like BMW and other manufacturers and things like that. Now, could any of them, Volkswagen, a manufacturer, or Siemens, an industrial conglomerate, or Amazon Web Services, a cloud service provider, could any of them have done it alone? Doubtful. GE tried it. GE tried maybe almost 10 years ago. GE tried it with the GE Digital and the Predix platform and things like that. But they did not get this whole partner thing right. And for whatever reasons, because of more pressing corporate priorities, GE has de-emphasized digital over a period of recent times. But I mean, sooner or later they will come back. It's only a matter of time before they come back. But the industrial cloud partnership and the Predix experience of GE tells us that the ecosystem of partners and institutional players, that's also extremely critical. So to sort of summarize a response to your question, Venkatesh, I think at 4 levels we need to reimagine. One is technology mix and match. How do we configure technology, existing technology? You don't go and invent fundamental technology as businesses. Second is how do we reimagine the business model, the products, the value proposition? How do we make money? Third, how do we reimagine operations and supply chain? And the last is, how do we reimagine the ecosystem of partners and the institutions? I think these are extremely important. And somewhere if we miss any of these, then, it's a failed experiment, and then we need to come back again.
Interestingly, about 20 years back, I knew managers used to say, why should I know spreadsheet actually? Because I'm supposed to do, higher level thinking. Today, no manager can afford to do that. Same way, what has happened is suddenly the data explosion, right? See, the kind of data which we had 10 years back, honestly, spreadsheet was enough. But today, the kind of data you have at a customer level is very different kind. So suddenly, just to handle that data, right, I would need new set of tools. Now, the question could be, it's not necessary that I need to know the programming in the Python, but I need to lead a team, right? As a manager, I need to understand the capability. So I think that's what is the next level, which all of us need to do, including myself and Professor Sai Prakash, right?
Yes, it is the application of these new tools. And see, even in the context of, using some of these analytics, the programming and things like that, things are changing very fast. These low code and no code environments are becoming very popular, where you don't need to actually know coding to actually create applications. And all you need to do, there is a library of components, and then, you configure it in a logical way, and you feed in data and you get output. So what is more important is to understand, as Professor Shah says, how can these tools help me in doing my job better? Correct. See, analytics is a means to an end. Analytics by itself is useless. And this is what some of you who have sat in my class would recall. I always say, if any analysis, if the result cannot answer the question, so what? What do I do with that conclusion from the analysis? It's useless. I should be able to, there should be actionable insights coming out of analysis. What tool I use, how much I know about it, whether I can do it myself, fine. That is contextual. It depends how far you need to go. But otherwise, I think as long as you are focused on the end, then this is just an analysis is a means to that end.
I think if our mind had said that we're not going to change the physical flow and we'll take the physical as it is, there was no way we could have reimagined the problem, right? So this first idea that a lot of those physical manifestation, we have to keep questioning. And that is a one level which is going to change the way opportunity space is going to come. So when we talk about managers, right, I think as Professor Sai Prakash talked about, the curiosity and ability to understand what does technology mean? I think it's technology doesn't mean that I know intricacies of technology where I can do a dialogue to a technologist in that level, but more in terms of what does it mean in terms of the nature of trade-off, the way physical to digitization I can do. So I think that is what the curiosity is all about, ability to relook at it, right? And unfortunately, tendency to look at, so we talked about, started by giving several examples of each of those technology. I think when we look at technology and just apply it in a mechanical way, because X did it in this way, Tesla did it in this way, then we're going to fail ourselves. Because then you're just looking at it as a fad and say, I also want to do it. So I think we need to have a good understanding of what are the basically value which we're providing to our customer, and this whole idea of mixing and match in a collaborative way. I think so. The collaboration, experimentation, some of those are going to be very important, and a lot of those are not new. As Professor Sai Prakash talked about it, we have done transformation earlier. So same level of challenges, organizational challenges, all that we need to do. I think the way I look at some of these issues is especially for operations and supply chain professional. A lot of things which we talked about are going to be very easy to actually copy. So, Zerodha did something. Honestly, somebody else will be able to do it reasonably fast, at least the use of technology. But finally, you're going to deliver this through your operations and supply chain. And as you said, in that area, it's slightly more difficult to copy. So if you want your whatever, reimagination, if you want it to be sustainable, where it gives you competitive advantage for a longer time, I think then you have to make sure you build those capabilities of using those technology in operation supply chain in a meaningful way, where we finally add value to the business. So to me, that's where the operation supply chain professionals have a great advantage. That if you're a part of this reimagination journey, then you'll be able to build something which is sustainable, more difficult to copy. And that's where you actually play a big role, right? And to some extent, since we have just few minutes, I can't resist from saying this. Honestly, you all guys have a unique opportunity. Not, I mean, the way people say people who were in 90s in India had a unique opportunity that suddenly, which was not available in 80s. So as a manager, you could do a whole lot of things differently. It's similar today, that whole digital technology has given you an opportunity to reimagine your operations and supply chain, which was not there earlier. And, you know, especially if you're in a legacy business, you obviously have a huge disadvantage. You know, there's your information technology, your ERPs are of older kind. They work with a time frame which are different, right? And you have this native, digital players coming and ability to do very differently. But I think you have this great opportunity where you can play a role which no other, I would say, generation of MBAs could do it. So do take this opportunity, because there's also, scarier part of this, that the kind of this whole digital, this whole trans, we talking about this fourth revolution, which works at the speed, scale, and scope in a very different way, which was there in the past. So you also don't have that luxury. So on one hand, you have a great opportunity, which no other generation of MBAs had. But you also have this scare that if you don't grab this opportunity and keep re-equipping yourself, then you're going to be somewhere obsolete and other people are going to take over. So grab this opportunity, right? Don't get too worked up about saying, I don't understand this technology in the very detailed way. But keep asking this question about reimagination the way we talked about. So, again, summary, reimagine, but with certain frameworks we provided. Recognize that In a legacy business, it's going to be more challenging, but that's where there are great opportunities. And do partner. You don't have to work alone, right? Ability to collaborate within a firm and ability to collaborate across firms. And obviously, things are not going to work exactly that you plan. So keep, experimenting, keep learning, keep changing as you go along.